we'd been told sort of a couple that were under consideration, Ivan Toney, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It seems that Mazraoui is the choice of Ineos, Ten Hag. Obviously, Ten Hag has worked with him before at Ajax. He's worked with Anthony before, so is that part of the thinking that they can, understand each other and maybe he can bring something out of Anthony?
Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is a one-on-one interview. And I'm joined by Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic, friend of the channel as well. How are you doing, Laurie? Okay?
I'm great, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. My forehead is peeling off at a rate of knots, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about Manchester United. We're going to be talking about transfers, a little bit about the sort of general feel at Manchester United at the minute and sort of a sort of state of play with Man United, because it seems like whenever we have you on, we're oscillating between some absolute terrible situation or actually things feel a little bit better. But at the moment, things feel a little bit better, don't they?
I think so. I mean, I suppose with Manchester United, there's always that extreme reaction, right? People have passionate feelings towards the club, and because there's so many eyeballs on it, then you get a wealth of voices from all sorts of platforms. But it feels like being out here and seeing Erik ten Hag going through his coaching sessions again with a new coaching team, with the executive football leadership team over here as well, having those kind of direct discussions with him. I think it feels like that's what a football club should be like. Yeah. And obviously then the results on the pitch are the important thing as much as the culture around the place as well. But I think those little signs are quite encouraging.
Yeah, it does feel like things generally on the whole, despite the season we had last season, I know the FA Cup made a lot of difference, but it doesn't feel like it's doom and gloom at the moment. It feels like generally the way people are talking about United is, right, let's see about next season. That feels quite exciting to me. Let's start with some transfers a little bit, and we can kind of look at how the team's shaping up before the start of the season. Scott McTominay has been one this morning pretty much that we've seen coming out as potential bids coming in. What's the latest, as far as you're aware, with Scott McTominay and his sort of future at Manchester United?
Yeah, a couple of reporters, I think it was James Ducker and Jamie Jackson, that I've seen, maybe others as well, have reported about a second bid from Fulham. I think the first one was 17 million, second being 20 million, which is getting towards, I think, what United might accept. So they're not certainly pushing them out the door, anything like that. But I think it goes for all players in the squad. It seems like quite a few players anyway that they will listen to offers for them if there are a suitable level. Fulham have been interested in Scott McTominay since last season. I know that West Ham got close to having a bid accepted last season, but Fulham were also there knocking on the door, as well as Bayern Munich. I don't know if you recall. So it's quite an interesting array of clubs, and even more recently this summer, there's the Turkish clubs, particularly Galatasaray, I think, that have made inquiries on his availability. But yeah, I think they would want a little bit more than that, United. Maybe 25 million, maybe with a few add-ons, I'm not sure. But United have got a decision to make, because he's got 1 year left on his contract with an optional extra as well. But you're getting to the point now where the value that he's got will start to reduce because of the contract, because of his age. I think he's nearly 28. That being said, I've always sort of regarded him as a player that offers something United different. And certainly last season, he came on in matches and help win games. That Brentford one obviously is very memorable, but he scored quite a few goals. And so do United really, can they afford to lose a player like that, particularly in the environment with Rasmus Højlund being out for 6 weeks now, with Joshua Zirkzee coming in, who hasn't played in the Premier League before? Can they really afford to lose a player that has a proven record of at least scoring a few goals in the Premier League? But that being said, if they get the money in, maybe they can then reinvest it in an outright striker.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because to me, you look at the midfield, you think Casemiro's performances and wages, he sort of maybe should leave, and maybe United would be open to that. You look at Eriksen, his age and sort of seeming inability to be able to play any more than 60 minutes at the sort of top level, maybe he should go as well. Scott McTominay, he's maybe slightly limited in what he can do. Maybe you think, we can't get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
And the other two are over 30.
Yeah.
I think McTominay is almost this perfect combination of he's a bit younger and he's on less money than those two. But it feels to me as though he's sort of, it's a shame that he's the one we'd get all the profit for, because he's the one I'd sell last out of those three. But it seems like United are just trying to get money where we can. Does it feel like that to you a little bit?
I think so, really, because we keep being told that the PSR, FFP calculations are very tight, and you're right. Obviously being an academy player, it goes down as pure profit on the balance sheet. I don't really fully understand that whole concept, but that's what people say. So let's go with that. And from his perspective, I suppose he's thinking, well, I have been at the club all my life, and the role that I've got is like is an impact player. I mean, so he's playing at number 10, wasn't he, last night against Real Betis, and kind of crashing the box as we've seen him do. Had a chance, slipped through by Ahmed, I think, and had a shot. Could have had a foul as well when he was bursting through to a long ball. So that's the kind of play that you sort of expect from him. But from his perspective, maybe he wants to be the main guy at the club, or at least certainly be a regular starter. And clearly at Fulham, he would be that. So I mean, they've lost Paulinho, haven't they, to Bayern Munich, and it's weird because they are different players, I would say. But maybe Fulham would use him in that way. So maybe that's the appeal for him, but clearly it's got to make sense financially for United.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at some other positions then, I think in particular we'll look at some central midfielders and defenders. But before that, up front, there's been reports, I think it was James Ducker again, and rumours that United are looking at another attacker, and whether that's in response to Højlund's injury, out for 6 weeks according to reports, or they wanted another attacker anyway. Do you see that as being likely, and do you think that's something that Ten Hag's looking for?
Yeah, we at the start of the summer, so after they'd signed Xerxes, we reported that they were having consideration, I suppose, about an out-and-out striker, because it was put to me that Xerxes can play across the front three. Although when I checked it, I think he's only has played number 9, maybe number 10 a few times. But United see him as a player with qualities that can, he dribbles with the ball quite nicely. Yeah. He's got that technical ability, like Anthony Martial had, I suppose. So, would they actually benefit from having a number 9 traditional sense that had scored goals in the Premier League before? So the names, we'd been told sort of a couple that were under consideration: Ivan Toney, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So whether or not, but again, it comes down to selling players. So maybe that's the trade-off with the McTominay thing or others. And on Casemiro, you sort of think Saudi Arabia were there, or at least there were conversations around him, but the market in Saudi hasn't kicked off really, and maybe they're going for a lower age profile player. So yeah, I think maybe the Casemiro one, it feels like he might actually end up staying. But so in terms of the striker, I wouldn't be surprised if Erik ten Hag is asking that question, and then it comes down to, do Ineos feel that that's a prudent way to spend the money? Do they need reinforcements elsewhere? There's so many. It's a little bit like whack-a-mole at the moment, where you talk about the right back situation, left back even. So I know you're probably gonna. Yeah, no, I'm sort of seeing the questions out your mouth here, but it feels like there's quite a few options, and they're trying to juggle all of them.
Yeah, and let's just go straight into some of the next ones, because you mentioned Calvert-Lewin, which would be a bizarre one to me. Ivan Toney kind of makes sense, but Calvert-Lewin, I just think he's barely. When's the last time he started like 10 games in a row? I feel like he's on the bench. Can
I blow your mind with a stat? Yeah. Do you know he played more Premier League minutes last season than Rasmus Højlund?
I think we have to stop this interview. That is absolutely stunning to me. I can't believe that. In my head, all I can imagine him is sat on the bench looking a bit upset.
Because he was injured for a long time, wasn't he, the season before, and maybe did it get stretched back into the prior season?
Yeah,
and then he came on, didn't he? And he had the cheek fracture, I think, but he did play on with a mask. So I think, and I think he scored 8 goals in all competitions last season. Because I was looking into it when somebody mentioned him to me, I was sort of like, are you sure about that? That doesn't sound great, and it wouldn't be. And I mean, Tony's, you'd think he's kind of at that higher level, right? I mean, Brentford though would want, I think, more, for him than Everton would be able to demand for Calvert-Lewin. But yeah, he has scored goals in the Premier League, and maybe they just think, okay, he would be someone that we could rely on to perform that role. Wouldn't kick up about not starting every game. But I'm not saying that either of those are actually going to happen. It's just that they're the kind of discussions that they're kind of weighing up.
Okay, cool. Moving all the way back to centre back, because it felt like since the centre back stuff sort of erupted about 6 weeks ago almost now, or maybe slightly less, we've had right backs and strikers and left backs even but it felt like, at one point we were close to De Ligt, we were having bids left, right and centre for Branthwaite popping off this 40 million, 50, it felt as though there was real energy and movement in that centre back position. And then we signed Euro, and then Euro gets injured, and it feels like nothing's happening. What's your understanding of where we're up to with centre backs? Do we still want another one? And are United going as sort of actively in that position as we were maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago?
I suppose the reason why there hasn't been so much chat so far since the Euro thing is because I think United were trying to keep that very closely guarded secret the length of time that he might be out for. So now there's been acknowledgement that it looks like 3 months, around that mark. But clearly they need more scans to ascertain the exact nature of the injury and then what the rehabilitation might be. But again, it's difficult to predict with a metatarsal injury, which is what we believe it is. United are just saying foot injury at the moment. So at the time when all those sort of bids were going in and discussions, I do wonder in hindsight there was intention there with both of them, but also it did aid the situation with Yoro, I suppose, in that it kind of made people unaware that was maybe the main target, and strengthened their hand in negotiations in terms of, well, we've got these other options, so we don't have to go to the level that you're asking for. Although in the end the bid, it was quite a high, I think, transfer fee, 62 plus 8 million euros. But I mean, it's a real big blow for United, this Yoro thing, because that was like a signature transfer for them, a real statement, and for him to be out so soon, is really a bit of a disaster, to be honest. So I think they're probably reevaluating the situation, and I wouldn't, they already at that point when they signed Yoro, we were being told that they would maybe do 2, possibly even 3 centre backs if they sold one. Lindelof obviously has got interest from Turkey. Harry Maguire, it feels like he's going to stay there just because he's reliable. But it was kind of curious to see those two start centre back again. That's the centre back partnership that started under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in 2019. So it feels like maybe that actually, I mean, Martinez will come back, won't he? But it's not so far removed from what we've seen for years previously.
Yeah, it's when they both started, I thought this, and not in a bad way, because I actually quite like both those players, but I just thought I thought we had moved on a little bit from this sort of structure. I know Martinez is a different case because he's just not back yet, but I think if Martinez gets injured, they are starting. That is the Solskjaer pairing that's starting for Man United, because I know Johnny Evans was great last season, but he's another year older and presumably another year sort of closer to retiring. Let's look at right back a little bit then, because Wan-Bissaka seems to be the one that we're willing to let leave. For a lot of last season, it felt sort of back and forth, maybe who was going to start, who was taking that role. It feels like Dallow's sort of got that locked down now. Wan-Bissaka, West Ham. Then there's this sort of Mazraoui kind of love triangle. He was going to go there, but then he's not, and then we're going to get him, but we need to sell West Ham to Wan-Bissaka. I can't even get the words out. What's going on there, and do you think that will sort of resolve itself by Wan-Bissaka to West Ham, Mazraoui to Man United?
You're saying who's coupling up with who?
Yeah,
it feels a bit Love Island. Now that finishes,
isn't it?
It's finished, right? It's done. I've not been watching it, but people tell me it's done.
Yeah. Sure.
This is the new one. Okay. It keeps evolving, doesn't it? This one, because it felt like at one point to me that the Denzel Dumfries Wan-Bissaka swap with Inter was plausible, because it solved the issue of where does Wan-Bissaka go. Because if he'd been up for West Ham, I mean, I know that if he's not been agreed yet between West Ham and United, but I think I don't get the sense that he's absolutely knocking down doors to go and play for West Ham, whereas I think Inter's much more appealing. So that's why I was kind of thinking maybe that would actually work out. It seems that Mazraoui is the choice of Ineos, Ten Hag. Obviously, Ten Hag has worked with him before at Ajax. He's worked with Antony before, so is that part of the thinking that they can understand each other and maybe he can bring something out of Antony? I don't know how it's going to resolve itself, but it does feel like with the Wan-Bissaka one, he's got 1 year left on his contract. That's why it's been more pressing than other positions. But again, he has to go for a right back to come in.
It seems like that's sort of, we're locked into that now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have to, we've spent 100 million-ish, maybe slightly less. But now, any extras have to sort of be one in, one out. Is that
that's what they keep saying? I mean, we had this, didn't we, under the Glazers, and then they would sort of find somebody somewhere at the very end of the window, and I guess put it on the credit card almost, and so you can never write that off. But it does feel like they want to do things differently, want to be correct with the calculations for PSR and FFP, because we've seen with Everton and Nottingham Forest that Premier League do dock points if you're over that by a significant margin. I
want to talk about midfielders in a minute, but before that I would like to bring you a word from our sponsors, Manscaped. And Manscaped have brought out, I mean, we've said it a million times, but I can't say it enough, the Performance Package 5.0, and that is everything in this bag right here. I could go through it item by item, Laurie, but you'd only get so excited that you'd probably have to leave, because they've brought the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, which is your perfect 2-bladed trimmer. It's getting everything done. As far as your grooming is concerned, Manscaped have you covered. And there's the ear and nose hair trimmer as well, of course. Then there's the liquid formulations, deodorants, tonics to make sure that you want to stay smelling good as well as looking good, don't you? Come on, let's be honest. And of course, to go with all that, you've got the boxer briefs. And to keep it all in, it's the Shed travel bag as well. Look at that. I've been carrying this around tour with me, slinging it over the shoulder, getting off the team bus. You know the drill at this point. Use the code Paddock Tour to get 20% off and free shipping for all of those good things in there. Again, thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring the show. Use the code Paddock Tour to get 20% off and free shipping. Your balls will thank you. The link is in the description. And speaking of balls, let's go back to some footballs, shall we? Very nice stuff. That was
Very
it.
nicely done there.
Manuel Ugarte is a name that we've all sort of come to know over the last sort of few weeks. And then this is just my opinion on this, and you know, obviously your opinion. You know more about this than me, I'm sure. It's always felt a little bit like it's come more from the other side than United side. And I don't know if that's the case, but to me it's like, is this deal happening or not happening? But is there any interest here? Or is it more PSG wanted Ruben Neves, was it? Not Ruben Neves, João Neves, sorry. And to get that deal sort of over the line, we need to get rid of Ugarte. What's happening here? Because it feels like, yeah, they want him and they can do a loan for him and there's 60 million and all this, but then nothing seems to actually be happening.
Are you suspicious that United might be getting burnt in the transfer market, like your face?
No, you're right. Stop with the face burning jokes.
Sorry, I had to say it.
My forehead is literally a flake of my forehead just fell off as I was saying stop with that. So maybe you can carry on with those jokes.
Okay, great.
But are United getting burnt in the transfer market? Yeah, that's the question.
There's definitely interest there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's not fake news. But it's, I think, a question of how strong is the overall desire from everybody at the club to go for him at the price that PSG would demand, and maybe if they can get creative and do some kind of loan with an obligation or something, then that offsets the financial cost for at least another year. Then it works out. I don't know. Again, like you say, I think if it was a universal desire to go for him, then we would have had more progress right now, because midfield clearly is an issue that needs to be resolved. As you say, Casemiro and Eriksen are over 30 now. Mount has obviously been on pre-season tour, but he started the Arsenal game as number 10 and then came on as number 10 against Real Betis. I presume he'll start against Liverpool and play 60 minutes or whatever, and maybe he does start as number 10. So, but anyway, he's not like that deep line midfielder. I know Kobbie Mainoo's the guy for that, so I'm sure he'll come back and he'll slip straight in. But it's felt that they've needed somebody. Sofiane Amrabat obviously started against Man City in the FA Cup final, and throughout all the season you sort of thought, okay, there's no way they're going to trigger this clause, and they haven't ultimately. But I feel that might also be one that comes back onto the agenda. Clearly that would be an Erik ten Hag kind of push to get him back in.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the weight that FA Cup final has had in the careers of some of the people at Man United. Like, I don't know if it's the only reason that Ten Hag stayed. I know that you reported as well that they were keen on keeping him even before that game. But like, we won that game. It may well have saved the career of Sofiane Amrabat at Man United, which we yet to see. But there was no way he was signing for United before that. Was it Brighton, Newcastle, Man City? Those last three games, whichever order they were in. And obviously, it seems to have saved Ten Hag's career a little bit as well. Like, it was a massive game that won it. Just on that then, so the midfield area. As far as you're concerned, do you think United would be willing to sell all three of those players that we mentioned, Eriksen, Casemiro, and McTominay? Or is it let's see if we can get which two we can sell? Or is it we get one and then we're done? Like, because we're going to need a lot of upheaval here if we're willing. Eriksen we're willing to sell, Casemiro we're willing to sell, McTominay. But do you think there's a limit there? Yeah,
certainly. I think if they sell all three, I mean, it depends the price, right? If they got good money for all three and they could, then regenerate the squad, then maybe they'd go for it. But I think the realities of the situation are different. You can't. I think that would just be fanciful thinking that they could sell, all three of them. I think they'd probably be happy. I think they'd be happy with one sort of major sale in that area so that they could then reinvest the money. I just think it feels like too difficult to. Maybe two, but you're just not hit. There's not enough noise around it. There's not enough. It doesn't feel like that's going to happen. It feels like there's going to be two of them staying, and then maybe one going.
Yeah, it was weird when at the end of the season you would have put your money on Casemiro being the one to leave.
Yeah,
and now it looks like that was always the issue. Who's going to sign him? And if it's not Saudi, who would? And it's weird, isn't it? Because we always look at Saudi as this sort of like get out of jail free card. Like you've got a player that's too old on too much money, send it. But that, like you said, if they don't have the same transfer policies they did for the last couple of seasons, then who else would take Casemiro?
Yeah.
I think a player of his age and wage.
Yeah, the salary's a big one, isn't it?
It's crazy, yeah. Just back to centre backs for a second. I know we touched on where things are up to there. Are there any other names in that area that United are looking at? Because obviously Branthwaite, we seem to be getting priced out of him. Whether that was completely legit interest or not, as you mentioned, who knows what was going on with the Euro sort of smokescreen almost. But are there any other names there that you think, actually, instead of paying 50 for him or 45 for De Ligt, is there sort of a 15, 20 million pound centre-back that United could be looking at where we ain't got much money, but we need reinforcements here?
Yeah, I think you'd hope that's where the recruitment team at United could sort of suggest a few options, and then you've got the new executive structure that could then actually execute the deal. Yeah, I mean, the other name I'd been sort of told, David Hanko at Feyenoord, but I think he's probably even more than what you're saying there, 20 million, sort of maybe towards 30, and then you get into the point of, well, okay, is that actually now he's for that kind of money, do you have to start him, or he's going to be a starter rather than a squad player? I think for 30 million, you probably could just actually rotate, certainly, but he's left-footed, so that's the one thing that I keep thinking about, like, if Martinez does get injured, that left-footed centre-back then that could maybe shift out to left-back as well, given the question mark still over Tyrone Malacia. Luke Shaw came back quite well, I think, with England. I know it was only sort of 1.5 games, right? So we still need to see how he comes back after summer. So it feels like an area that needs a bit more reinforcement again. But yeah, so maybe that's an aspect. Sort of cover for that left centre-half, left-back role is something on the agenda.
Yeah, because it's weird that seem to be more actively trying to get a right back, where the left back situation was an utter disaster last season for Man United. Is that just because there's someone who's actively interested in Wan-Bissaka and who's going to buy Malacia with his injury record, and Luke Shaw we want to keep?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah. It's a shame, isn't it, really? Just looking a little bit more at the sort of bigger picture stuff. Obviously, you've reported on United for many years, and you've been to pre-season tours, and you've seen what last season was as a whole, which was largely a disaster, but with this incredible sort of shining peak at the end. How does it feel covering this sort of new Manchester United in terms of how the public are reacting to them, social media, how other journalists, how people within the club are talking? Does it feel as though there's been a big change sort of post Ineos? I know we've seen loads of personnel changes, but sort of atmosphere-wise, how does it feel to you?
Yeah, I think the fact that you've got a person like Ruud van Nistelrooy in the building, a couple of players sort of unprompted have mentioned him in terms of the aura that he has. So I think that's significant. You've also got Rennie Hacke there, who's taken over from Mitchell van der Gaag in terms of setting the schedule and organising the training plans. And then Jelle ten Rouwelaar as the goalkeeping coach. Tom Heaton was talking to us about the cognitive ways that he likes to coach in terms of kind of putting the brain under pressure for different scenarios and trying to make the right call. And to be, I guess last night he maybe made the wrong call, didn't he, in pushing the ball out? But I think that was a kind of blind spot that he didn't see. So that's the kind of thing. It's more the ball at the feet, I think, is what ten Rouwelaar's going to be bringing in. So anyway, you've got these kind of new voices, fresh faces that I think has given a bit of energy. We saw the open training session. It felt like it had good tempo to it, end-to-end kind of games, but also a sort of session about trying to beat the pressure, I think, and passing through the lines. So yeah, that has, and certainly, like I say, having the execs over here who have that sort of pedigree for working in football, at least with Ashworth and Wilcox, Barada as well, and then Dave Brailsford's here as well, so that they've been having conversations with Ten Hag, after training, at different moments. So you feel that's a connected system. That's what you want from a football club. It hasn't been that way previously, no. So I think that has certainly given a bit of energy. On the flip side of that, Ineos have also come in and trimmed the squad, trimmed the staffing levels, haven't they? In terms of 250 people, looks like around that going to lose their jobs, and Johnny Evans I thought spoke well on that. Again, brought up by himself, which sort of shows that he's been thinking about it and just sort of reflecting on the fact that it is sad whenever anybody loses their jobs, and I think we have to recognise that as well. It's whilst it might feel great and positive for other people, it's obviously a kind of sad experience, but Ineos will say that they want to streamline the operations and therefore make it into a kind of competitive environment where it's not just you've got a job and you can stay at United for the rest of your career. You need to be proving yourself, whatever football pitch or off the pitch.
Just a little bit on the football pitch, like how have you seen United's performances this pre-season? I thought for me, the Betis game was the first one where I thought that looked like a proper team there.
Yeah.
The other ones felt very much sort of warm-uppy games, almost being caught out by the opposition being a bit more energetic than we were. I thought that first half yesterday, it felt like we were seeing something there. Do you get that impression as well, that they're sort of gearing up and getting actually close to being ready for the season?
Yeah, there's some nice sort of interplay, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I think for the first 50 minutes of the Arsenal game, to be fair, it looked quite good as well. And obviously Højlund scoring early doors. It was just then he gets injured, Yoro gets injured, the sort of life gets drained from the team performance. It's all a bit messy. You've got Hannibal up front, and it's like that's obviously not what the intention was. So it's a totally different profile of player. So I would give a little bit of I would add that caveat. But yeah, I thought that Sancho playing as false nine. Who would have thought that at any point? Sort of during this whole exile,
Sancho playing at false nine.
Yeah. It was funny. I mean, that was the kind of trial last season because Ten Hag was like, well, I need a striker and I'll have to play Sancho. Let's see how it goes. And here we are again. Lindelof and Maguire centre back and Sancho up top. But I feel like there is Ahmad's performances. I actually thought he was quite mixed against Arsenal, but I thought against Real Betis, he showed that kind of determination. He spoke to us before the game, and you could sense from him that he is humble, but he's got that ambition. He's spoken to Ten Hag. He came across quite positive. I thought maybe he'd be like, yeah, no, I need to play, and maybe I'll have to consider my options if I don't. But actually, no, he was like, no, I understand where the manager's coming from. We've had a good conversation, and he's showing that he's walking the walk.
Yeah, just a little bit finally on a couple of those players in particular. You mentioned Ahmad there, who I was going to ask about, who I think has probably been United's best player this tour. Certainly that Betis performance was the best performance of anyone on the tour so far, I think. Harry Amas is another one. And I think he's sort of grown into the tour a little bit. I thought it was Rosenborg where he got sort of nutmegged and caught behind a little bit. But I thought that Betis performance, again, it was full of energy, full of aggression. For a 17-year-old as well, he's got a real sort of drive and power to him. I know Luke Shaw's fit, but he's not played. He's not been on part of pre-season whatsoever. Do you see a chance for Harry Amas next season?
I do, I mean, there was rumours, weren't there, of last season of him. He was in the squad, wasn't he, for at least one game? But there was rumours that even before that, would he get a go, given the left-back situation? And I was told that he was just, very young, very, very small. So would that, to then go into the Premier League, it's a difficult thing. Yeah. But clearly, he's got that physicality to his game. He put in a pretty meaty couple of challenges, didn't he, when it got a bit spicy against Betis last night. And yeah, his quality on the ball is clear, right? The technical ability that he's got to turn out of trouble and beat the Arsenal press over in LA, and then also a couple of times down the left. He's kind of set up Ahmad's goal, didn't he, with that cross, and that's what you want in that position. Overlapping run, get the ball in the box. It's that's I think what United fans get excited about. And also off the pitch, he seems a pretty mature kid. I know, well. And it kind of just, I don't know, answers a question in quite a detailed way without and quite a modest way almost. So you can sense that he clearly would like a run at the team, but he's not by any means thinking, I've got this sewn up or anything like that. So I don't know, I've been surprised by what I've seen. I'd seen him a little bit in the academies, but not loads, and I think this has sort of shown actually he's got that chance.
Yeah, brilliant. And just finally then, obviously this has been one of the things that this summer has kind of had in it, is the sort of the test of Ineos, and of not just Ineos, but Ashworth and Wilcox and Barada. What's your sort of feeling about how they think this summer is going? Because it seemed like they were very aware of the PR. They were very aware to not get dragged into De Jong-style contract situations, or Di Maria-style transfers. It's younger, it's maybe less proven, but sort of more hungry players that we seem to be going for. Do you think they think things are going to plan, or are they maybe panicking about the Euro situation? Like, how would they grade themselves, do you think?
I think they would say before the Euro injury, I think good start. The two positions that we needed to strengthen in. We've got two young, promising players. Certainly, Yoro has been very much admired by clubs, and Real Madrid obviously were in the mix for him. And I think last time we spoke, didn't we? We thought, I was like, Real Madrid sniffing around. You were like, that means one thing, and actually they've come and sort of won the day there, United. So I think they would have been quite pleased with themselves on that score. But the injury does change the dynamic. This is the kind of thing you can't plan for. You can have all the great ideas in the world, but then something happens and you've got to change approach a little bit. Maybe it's that sort of Mike Tyson quote about you can have best laid plans and you get punched in the face, and the Euro thing feels like a punch in the face. So I think they would they know that it's a long-term process. This, like, it's not going to turn overnight, and if they keep making the right decisions, then whatever happens with bad luck, it should overcome that. But I think they would. We'll see at the end of the summer. I think it's certainly a little bit sort of on the edge maybe at the moment, just given the fact that there's been this Euro injury and the Højlund injury.
Yeah, it just feels like it started so well, and then now no transfers for the last couple of weeks. Doesn't seem like we're particularly close to anything.
Yeah. You wanted like one transfer a week. For the rest of the summer.
For the rest of my life, ideally. Somehow Ineos will get rid of the transfer windows entirely, and we'll just be buying players every single week between now and my inevitable death. Speaking of inevitable death, this is the end of the video. Thank you very much, Laurie, for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you on the channel and to see you out here on tour. Make sure you check out Manscaped as well. Like we said, Paddock Tour, the code for 20% off and free shipping. Thank you very much, Laurie. Cheers so much.
We're shaking hands. Yeah, love it. Love it. Great.
See you in a bit.